Hey guys, this is Ben with Tilmor. Today I'm going to show you guys how to remove and reinstall the final drive on your tractor. Before you do that though, make sure your tractor's secure, make sure you're in a nice flat area, you got your jack stands in the right spot, your battery disconnect is shut off. So let's go ahead and let's get started. First though, we're going to remove our rotor cover. It gives you a little more light, allows you to be able to see what you're doing just a little bit better. To remove that, you're going to need a 3/8 socket. It's just 4 bolts. Just take that, lay it off to the side. Next, we're going to remove 3 bolts here to remove the cover to be able to access the snap ring. You have to remove the snap ring to be able to slide the final drive out. This cover is siliconed on, so you're going to have to break it free. It may be really stuck or it might pop right off. So that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to need a pair of snap ring pliers. Always make sure you have your safety glasses on, anything you're doing. Don't get stuff in your eyes, but these snap rings can be a little bit tricky. They can go flying off. Remove your snap ring. Once you've got your snap ring removed, now you're ready to go ahead and remove the bolts and be able to slide the final drive off. We definitely recommend lifting it from one of the 2 holes. So on the other side, you'll lift it from this hole. On this side, you'll obviously lift it from the top hole. You want to be able to pick it up from the top side because it's unbalanced, it's heavy. If you try to use a jack, it may roll off. So just be very careful if you're doing it that way. But we definitely recommend picking it up from the top. So we're going to go ahead and use our chain hoist here. I go ahead and I put a little bit of tension on it because when you do remove all the bolts, the final drive has a tendency to want to fall down. So if there's no tension on it, the final drive can swing clear around. So that's why I attach the hoist and pull tension up on it to hold it in place before I remove the bolts. You'll need a 15/16 socket and a wrench. And after you've got all 3 bolts out, you'll go ahead and you'll just work it and slide it out. This may slide off really easy, it may not. You might have to wiggle it and move it around because you are sliding the axle through the splined gear up there. So it may come off easy, it may not. But go ahead and just kind of work it out, slide it off, and there you go. There you have your final drive is removed. At this point in the process, we're ready to put our final drive back onto the tractor. A couple things to point out. Number 1, make sure your vented plug is on the top of your final drive, and the axle slides in through this gear. You're lining up splines, so it's probably not going to just slide right on. You're going to have to move it and lift it and turn the spindle out here to be able to get everything lined up. And then we'll just kind of work through it. Sometimes they go on really easy, really well. Sometimes you kind of got to fight them to get them on. So just got to have a little patience when we're doing it, and we'll work through it. Okay, are you ready? All right, so I want to get it kind of lined up. One way that I've done it before is you can slide a 5/8 rod through there and into the top hole. That kind of pulls some of the weight off, but you got to just kind of do it whichever way makes the most sense to you and the way that feels the easiest for you. So let's go ahead and we'll try to slide it on without the dowel. And then if we need the dowel, we'll just insert the dowel. So when you're doing it, make sure that you get it at the right height. And again, you don't want to let that axle crash into that seal on the inside because it could damage it, and then that's going to cause a leak. You're going to have to pull it back off. So go ahead and you can feel the gear and the axle mesh together. And once you get it close, you can take a bolt and just put it in through one of the holes. It kind of takes some of the weight off of it, helps line it up as you're sliding it in. So get those bolts started in there. Then I take the nut and I just start the nut. I make sure there's a nut on the back side of the bolt before I get rid of my chain hoist. Because if you don't, the chances of it sliding off are very slim. But if it does, it's going to crash down on your feet. And that's why I always put a nut on the back side. Everything's still loose, it just can't slide off. So this one here, you may have to back the bolt up a little bit to be able to get the nut on. So now that we have all the nuts started, let's go ahead and let's get rid of our chain hoist. Kind of get it off here to the side. All right, so now what we are looking to do is we have it all lined up. We can't just bolt it right on because we want that axle to be able to float in there. This axle is short enough that it's got to be pretty much perfectly lined up to get that axle to float. And what happens is if that axle is not floating in there, it could be wearing on one side or the other on that seal on the 2-speed. So that is the reason why we want to get that axle to float. So how I do it is I just go ahead and I tighten up the bolt and the nut with a wrench and get it snug and kind of get it in the right spot so that axle moves in and out. So let's just go ahead and snug them up by hand. You still want it to be able to move up and down, but you want to get it as close to tight without tightening it. Here's the front one up here. So remember, there's only 3 bolts that we're tightening. Okay, now let's go down here, and there's a front, a middle, and a back. Okay, once you get your final drive bolted up on, it's secure. This is what you're trying to get to. So that axle in there is floating back and forth. If this final drive isn't aligned correctly, that axle is going to be tight, and that's what we do not want. Usually if you spin it, it's going to spin really, really free, and that's good. And you're going to be able to find the spot where the axle slides in and out, and that's what you want. We have had a little bit better success when you get the 3 bolts in. If you take that final drive and you pick up on it, maybe use your chain hoist, maybe use a floor jack. If you pick up on it just ever so slightly, that will help you achieve that floating axle as well. So now that we got everything in the right spot, we have it so the axle is floating, let's go ahead and tighten it up with our 1/2-inch impact and our wrench. Let's go ahead and let's put our snap ring back on. So you can kind of hear it clip in, and then if you put real light tension on it, that snap ring slides back and forth in that groove. And I usually take a flashlight and look and make sure it's completely in the groove. And then what I like to do is check and make sure it's still floating. So I'm in here, I'm on the brake rotor bushing, and I'm pulling out, and I'm just pushing in the center of the axle. And that's what you want to achieve to make that seal last the longest. So now that we got our snap ring in, let's go ahead and let's put our cover on out here. And that is going to need to be siliconed. We just use a black RTV silicone. And the best is probably to put it right here on the final drive. You just need a real small bead clear around. And then you're going to get your 3 flanged 5/16 bolts. Make sure you put Loctite on them, because all bolts that have a blue mark on them have blue Loctite on them installed from the factory. You'll see one that has a red mark on it and that has red Loctite installed from the factory. All right, got Loctite and silicone on that, and these are 1/2-inch heads. All right, that is installed, and that is removing and reinstalling the final drive on your tractor. You may notice our fender's not on, we didn't set our brake rotor. We have other videos to film, and we don't want to have to reassemble and tear back apart for time's sake. So that is removing and reinstalling the final drive, and then you can reference some of the other videos on setting the brake rotor, putting the wheel back on, putting the fender back on, so to just wrap everything up. But thank you for watching. Hopefully this was helpful. It definitely is a little bit time consuming. You have to use patience, but if there's anything we can help you with, please reach out. We'd be glad to help. Thank you.